Yeah.
And so I just think we have to be careful that we're not finding ourselves in spaces of vulnerability that expose us to things we are not ready for and can't handle
Yes, that's good
because we
stuff.
misuse it.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Truth Reveal podcast,
Yeah.
where we host conversations that relate in order to reveal truth so that we can ultimately be reconciled. I am your host today, Latricia, aka Sweet, and I have with me Holly Harris
What's up, y'all?
and the Miss Shanita Rogers.
Hello.
Hello. All right, you guys. So we have another hot topic tonight, or this afternoon,
Yes.
or this morning, whenever you're choosing to listen. Don't pay no attention to my blanket. It's starting to be sweater weather, and I just got in the mood already.
It's
So
cozy.
Yeah.
cozy. So we're going to be talking about conference culture. And
Yeah.
some of you may be thinking, what the heck is conference culture? It is literally what it sounds like, the culture of attending conferences. Um, we were having a conversation, Holly and I, and it so organically just kind of started evolving. And we said, stop. This is a podcast. We're gonna talk about this. So here we are, and we're so glad that you guys are a part
Yeah.
of this conversation. I have some notes here that I'm just referencing so that we can stay on track. So there are many aspects of conference culture. So I just want to start off first of all, um, asking you guys, what are some of the main conferences that you have attended throughout your adult
Mm.
um adult life? Because I'll be honest, I'm not attending as many conferences currently as I have in my past. But what are some main conferences that you have attended just that you can recall, or that maybe you even attended more than once, like it was part of your ritual that you went to this particular conference that really stands out to you?
Well, sweet, you and I went to Woman Thou Loose.
We did
And what was that, 2022?
too. Yes.
And I went to Woman Thou Loose in 2014, I think. So I've only been twice. And then it evolved into Woman Evolves. I haven't been to
Right.
Woman Evolve.
Okay.
But that one I have been to.
Yeah, I went to Woman Thou Loose when it was pretty much at its inception almost. This is Juanita Bynum, No
Oh,
More
Woman
no
thou
more
art,
Sheets,
sheets back in the
no
day.
more sheets, woman thou art loose.
Woman Thou Art Loose. So went to that one. I'm trying to think, have I gone to any other conferences other than now one that I was attending yearly was Pioneers Conference. That's with Dr. Faith Wakoma. So I've gone to her conferences quite a bit. I'm trying to think, is there any other?
I went and Jayla, well, my oldest daughter and I went to Pinky Promise, who had their Lindsay.
Oh, I remember Pinky
Oh,
But
Promise.
then
okay.
that was she announced that was her final one. And I
Okay.
was in total shock and disbelief.
Mm.
But because that was our first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to another women's conference with well, it's a local church, but they had your Kim Pothier Jones and Stacia Pierce. Is it Stacy Pierce or Stacia Pierce? I don't know, but Real Talk Kim. Um, so I've been to those. Other than that, they've been smaller scale
Yeah, I think
Okay,
women's
mine is.
conferences.
I think that's
got
been
you.
pretty much like more smaller scale within your local church body, women conference types. But the big ones are the ones that I've named. I'm trying to. I don't think I can't remember. If I did, I can't remember,
Okay.
unfortunately.
I'm thinking, and I'm kind of like in the same boat. So Holly and I went to Woman Thou Art Loose
My
back in the
Lord.
day. So we're probably we probably went there I'm gonna give it either 98, 99, in between the
Yeah, that's
97,
pretty
Oh yeah.
'99
good.
time frame
Mhm.
because we were in college, and I think it
Mhm.
happened over the summer. And
Yep.
we rode down in the 85. That's an inside
Oh
joke.
my
That was the
god.
Honda Accord.
Oh,
Yeah.
We rode down in the
Sure.
85 to Atlanta, stayed with Shamika's
Mhm.
family. So that was a major conference for me. And I'll be honest, it was a life-changing
Mhm.
experience. Juanita Bonham was one of the guests, head, I don't want to say headliners, but she was one of them, one of the pastors that were preachers that was preaching outside of Bishop Jakes. And
Mhm.
I remember there being Mercy Seat Lady. I think she was there that year. I
Oh, what is
remember
it?
I'm
Yogi? Or
running,
is
I'm
it the
running.
other one? Yogi?
Stay no,
Oh
I'm
no.
running to the mercy seat. I felt like she
Which
was
one
there
is
that
that?
year. I can't think of
Oh,
her name right now. It escapes me.
it's either
Um,
Vicky Yogi
Vicky
or
Yohe.
yeah,
It
Vicky
may have
Young.
been
okay,
Vicky
Yogi.
Yohe.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Taffy Dollar on the stage
No.
because
Oh
I think she was there that year. I don't think she
Okay.
spoke or anything. She was just there in support.
Mhm.
Um, and it was just like something I had never experienced before. And then, of course, as Shanita said, which I thought was kind of like a good experience, full circle experience for me, that on the 2022, when
Mhm.
Woman Thou Art Loose had its last conference, I was
Wow.
able to go and be a part of that and see the whole mantle passing. And I
That's
haven't been to
awesome.
Woman Evolve. I've heard about it, but I haven't been. So
Mhm.
seems like we all been to Woman That Art Loose, a very prominent, a
because we
very
were trying to get loose,
we were
right?
trying to get
One of
loose.
the first conferences it seemed like, but I'm sure it was
Yeah.
other
Yeah,
ones, but the first big major conference, I
Yeah,
right.
it
guess.
was
Yeah.
huge. Like,
Hmm.
and I think like that year, like when we went, they did like a whole big like over the years of
Mm.
all the people. And shout out to Bishop Jakes because he was very influential, and I don't know why I didn't
Yeah.
know this, but he was very influential in giving voice to women.
Exactly.
A lot of the mainstream preachers that I became familiar with doing that early walk in my faith, the Juanita Bonhams, the
Mhm.
what's the name? The lady
McCullough.
on McCullough,
Mhm.
all of
Jackie
those,
McCullough.
Jackie
Yeah.
McCullough, all those prominent voices.
Mhm.
I can't name them right now. I was exposed to them through those conferences, even if I didn't attend because they had we're dating ourselves. They had VHS tapes and things of that
Yeah,
nature.
that's
So
how I watched
Yeah.
No More Sheets.
no
Yep.
more
Yep.
sheets. We
Had
sure
that tape,
did.
boy.
Conference culture. So we've all been to major conferences. And then, of course, obviously, in our local assemblies and our, hometowns or whatever,
Mhm.
people have different conferences for whatever reason.
Mhm.
In my context, personally, growing up, we didn't have as many conferences, I don't recall a lot of, as we had revival season,
Mm.
which kind of coincides with conference
Yeah.
seasons in
Yeah.
that summertime. And it was the time where the churches had now they done changed now, but they used to have 1 week revivals. We used to have a
Mhm.
guest pastor come
Yep.
in. Our guest pastor was Pastor Johnson from South Carolina, and he would come in from Mikes Creek, and that was the week long, and their choir would come, and every Sunday would kick it off, and then Monday through Friday,
Mhm.
you had your revival time,
Yeah.
which really felt more like conferences because I don't know if we was really being revived, but
Help us
play
this
on words.
very day.
And
Tent revivals too.
tent revivals, I
Ah,
remember
Jesus.
those. We didn't have those, but I remember being a part of them and going to
Yeah,
some of them.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
this is not uncommon within Christendom to gather
Mhm.
for times of fellowship. And then also along with conference culture and revival culture, there's convocation,
Mhm. That's true.
which is similar to a conference
Yeah.
style, just within whatever that organization is.
Yeah.
You're bringing in, you know, more prominent ministers, or maybe even the ministers within the organization, times of teaching and training and fellowship, and getting to see the people that you're kind of in community with, that may be spread out amongst different states and different regions. And so all of that to say, this is not uncommon for the saints to gather
Right.
Mhm.
and have the time of fellowship and the
Yeah.
time of community and growth and evolving and the activation of ministry gifts and things of that
Mhm.
nature. And as we've all kind of told our own stories, we've all experienced conferences on a larger scale. With For us, it was Women That Are Loose, and then on those maybe not so grand scales, but more regional scales with just different ones that we've attended individually.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something there's something about being in the atmosphere
Yes.
that's
The
just
faith
charging,
level,
and
honey.
it's just like,
Yeah.
whoa, we're here and we're all on one accord. Like the worship team doesn't have to work hard.
It doesn't.
It's like
The
there's
expectation
the
is there.
expectation is
Yeah, it's
there.
greater.
People are excited about being present.
Mhm.
Um, but and so this is a beautiful thing. I think it is a beautiful thing to gather. What we wanted to kind of talk about this evening, today, is now that we've gotten older, a little bit more established in our faith, we done been through some things, although we're not looking like some of the things that we've been through. Thanks be unto God. And we've matured, and I want to be careful to say we haven't matured beyond conferences. That's not what I'm
Oh,
saying.
yeah.
And that's not what we're talking about on this particular podcast, because I believe that there's an anointing that rests on them.
Mhm.
But we were just dialoguing about, and it just kind of came across because there was a recent conference that just passed, the Mantle Conference,
Mhm.
that was a huge prophetic conference held in Atlanta. I don't
Mhm.
want to quote bad numbers, but I want to say maybe 15,000. I
Yeah.
could be wrong, but I
You
think
said that with
maybe
us. Yeah.
around 15,000 people attended this conference. And if you looked at the roster of lineup of worship leaders, teachers, prophets, evangelists, all the fivefold ministry
Everybody was
was
there.
out in effect.
Okay.
It was a power packed couple of days of teaching and preaching and prophesying and worship and round tables and discussion panels, and it was a lot.
Mhm.
And it just kind of got us thinking and kind of got me thinking about how when we go to these conferences, especially when they're on those grander scales, because that's a pretty big, undertaking, 15,000 people from a logistical standpoint, hotel, like God bless whoever had to spearhead and manage that. Because
Yeah.
I could imagine,
A lot.
travel for all of those ministers coming in, hotel, picking them up from
Dealing with the
from the hotel,
personalities of
the
each one. Hallelujah.
personalities, my God, today, all of the things, all of the things.
Yeah.
And so we just want to talk about conferences and how do we measure conferences? What are the effectivenesses? What is the effectiveness of conferences in this day and age? The cost that is associated with conferences, because that's changed now.
Yeah.
I can't recall how much it costs to go to Woman Thou Art Lose, but I mean, we was little struggling college students, so it couldn't have been super expensive. But I'll tell you what we do laugh about: the fact that we all came back with no money.
My God, broke.
Lit- Literally, I promise you.
Yeah.
Did
Oh
we not have to get money from Shamika's aunt and uncle for gas? Or did they just give her some money?
I remember having $0, so if I ain't had no money, somebody gave
Lord.
us
Listen,
money.
And we made it back. Honey, we just love the
Girl.
Lord and just wanted to do right.
Mhm.
So everything they asked of us, I know I
Right.
wasn't praying about giving, I just gave. It was
At one moment, like when Juanita, that joke can raise over, that was that. But at one moment when she was up there, Lord, people were literally throwing money on the stage. They had to collect it in trash bags. That's how much
that was a
money
lot of
was
money.
on the stage. They couldn't even put it in the open basket. It was just too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We gave. So I want to talk to us, and I want us to kind of discuss, a lot has changed. We're talking about something that happened about what, 97, 98.
Yeah.
We're in 2024 now. A lot has happened. This is 20 something years ago. We've been through some life experiences. We've grown. We are in ministry ourselves individually. And so again, we were kind of talking about the Mantle Conference and just seemingly like there's a lot of, and I don't know if it's something that was just being highlighted to me, and you guys can chime in, but it seems like every time I'm on Facebook that somebody is having a conference,
Mhm.
and like these flyers are so glossy and shiny, and these pictures are immaculate, and it's like all the people, prominent ministers, some of them are regionally local, ministers, and you know, I started wondering about the effectiveness of the conferences.
Mhm.
And so for you guys, I know for me, and I'll just talk about my experience at that initial Woman Thou Art Loose, and then I'll talk about my experience at my last Woman Thou Art Loose. That first experience was something that I'll cherish forever. It was something totally new to me, being in this atmosphere of all of these believers in one centralized location, seeing Bishop Jates, who I'm seeing on TV, but now he's like literally, we're in the literal same room. The Juanita Bonham, who we talked about, who kind of, I kind of raised up on her ministry in college. And it just was like, it was such a charging atmosphere. I remember being convicted and coming home and getting rid of some of my little skimpy clothes. Um, I ain't lying. The Lord did. I got
Woo!
loose. I don't know about nobody else, but I got loose. I got rid of some of my little tighty tights, and because I felt convicted by the word. And I was like, I can't wear those clothes anymore. Um, and I was convicted to the point of action, to where I came home and responded. I gave because it was the right thing to do, and not even thinking about, probably not giving in wisdom, but my heart was just there to do because it was such a pure place. Fast forward, life has happened. I've grown, I've matured. And so my woman that I loose experience at 40 plus was a little bit different than my woman that I loose experience at 20, but still a charging atmosphere, still enjoyed seeing the round table. Was so blessed to be in the room to see something so significant happen in history, with the mantle passing from Woman Thou Art Loose to Woman Evolve. And still charged, didn't give all my money,
Yeah.
but did give. Still just like, wow, was so honored to have that experience. Like, I really was honored to have that experience. And I think it's one of those, and I got to hang out with Shanita, who was kind of like the culprit to how I was even able to have that experience. And again, something that I will equally cherish, because I was a part of history. So when people were talking about it, I was like, I was there. I was in the room. I felt, I was so giddy about it,
Yeah.
because I was standing there seeing something happen.
Mhm.
Um, and that was my takeaway. I don't remember a lot of the word. What I do remember is
Yes.
Priscilla
Shy.
Shire in that green jumpsuit
Yes.
Mhm.
preached like a crazy person. And I've been trying to find that clip of the whole message, but
Yes.
she stirred my heart so. And I remember Sarah Jakes Roberts message about the woman that the Lord used. What was her name? The harlot that helped the
Mhm.
Oh,
children
Rahab.
cross. Yes, I remember her message. I don't remember everybody else's, but those were like two that stood
Yeah.
out. So, like, I when we're talking about the effectiveness of conferences, what do you think we should be judging those on? Like, how do we measure the effectiveness of a conference, a revival, a convocation?
Application. And
Yeah.
I don't know that I think that's something we have to judge individually.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, I've been to a gazillion conferences,
Mhm.
small, large, and they each impact in a different way, and some of them didn't impact at all, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And so I think when you are open to Holy Spirit guiding you
Mhm.
and placing your feet in the right place at the right time, what you're supposed to receive, you will receive.
Yeah.
Now, I do think we have to be careful because some people are like conference hoppers
Mhm.
and they just go just to say, well, they had a word from the Lord and they got this message and she had this and that. Those things are great, but if it's not changing something within you or giving you revelation or affirming, confirming something,
Mhm.
and if it ain't the word of God, it's ineffective. That
Mhm.
we can I mean, I take back what I said. You can judge the word. Like if it's not the word of God, then we gonna know that.
Mhm.
So, and when I say judge the word of God, not judge the word of God as in whether or not God's word is valid, but what somebody is preaching. If it
Mhm.
lines up with the word of God, we know it's going to be
Mhm.
effective. But if it doesn't, then
Mhm.
it's just not going to do what we're anticipating it was going to do when we signed up for the conference.
Mhm.
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 Yeah.
And I agree with that too, as far as the way we measure effectiveness. I do feel like that there is a way you can see it on a collective scale. Because, like, if you look at some of the conferences, revivals, whatever you want to label them, gatherings of the past, you saw movements happen as a
Mhm.
result of those, Azusa Street,
Mhm. Yeah.
other
Mm,
ones that happened, that it just wasn't that momentary time, but
Right.
it continued to evolve for a number of days, years, or whatever have you. And um, so there is a way to measure it that way, but I definitely feel though individually, you have to ask yourself when you go to these conferences, how has my life changed? I will
Mhm.
but that comes with application, like Shanita said. I will say that conferences, if you go to the right one, they have a way. They literally can fast track you in the spirit. Like
mm,
if you're at the right one, like you can God literally can increase your capacity. He can, like Sweet said, stir up new gifts and reveal new gifts to you. You can go through deliverance, have breakthroughs, things that may not happen on a typical Sunday morning, because the level of faith in the room is so great that God has the ability to do more in those type of settings. So I think, if you go to the right one, but it has become a culture, like we said, and it's like everybody having a conference, and all of them might not have um, the right foundation, if you will, or the right motivation.
yeah.
Mhm.
And as a result, and I'm not saying you still can't get changed at those conferences if you come with the right heart,
Right.
you
Right.
may, still, but that definitely, like she said, is going to be on an individual basis as it relates to, change. So,
That that kind of segues me into with your statement, Holly, about motivation. So I think there's been I've heard this be said of other people, not anyone that I know personally, but the internet streets talk about people being conference leeches. Have you guys ever heard
Mm,
that term before?
yeah, like in the most recent one with Mantle, there was a um and it was recorded, it was put online. It was a prophetess, I can't remember what her name was, that she prophesied to Joshua Giles, and basically began to talk about being aware of leeches, people who would basically want to be in community with him because they would want to, benefit, I guess, from his anointing or whatever. But that was the leeches piece that she was talking about. I'm not sure if you're talking about it from a different context, but
I was talking, I mean, from that context, but just like when you see these billboard, no, not well, sometimes billboards, but yeah, when you see these flyers and you see, because it's marketing, and I know Shanita has some marketing background, it pulls you in.
girl, it's
Um,
elaborate these days. The
yeah,
videos, honey, I'll be like,
yes.
dang, that was fire. Like
It's like
it
if
ain't
I
just a
make
It's
simple
a whole
flyer no more.
production.
You
not.
ain't get no flyer no more.
No,
It's gonna be just, girl, the Women Evolve video, I was like, dang, it
it's
looked
a
like a
whole
Beyonce video.
production.
Well,
It's
not
a
a
Yeah,
Beyonce
production.
video, but it was
I
like really, but go
it's
ahead.
big. I used to do smaller scale conferences, women's conferences and workshops. And my heart was to see women impacted, in the kingdom of God. We talked about finances, we talked about marriage, we talked about being single and how we deal with certain things, having children, parenting. We did workouts, we ate, we did all kind of things together. And I was interested in developing the whole woman, which was one of the conference title was the whole woman. Um, but I took a backseat aside from doing the girls' conferences. But over the years, people have asked me, are you going to get back into it? And I have to admit, I'm a little turned off right
Mm,
now. And I have to hear specifically from God because I don't want to get caught up in what's trending. I don't want to have, you know, um, everybody on flyers.
I can't.
And there's
I'm
nothing
done.
wrong. Let me
I'm so
let me
done.
check myself. So I'm not being self-righteous. Them Perrys then got to me with that podcast they didn't have. So I'm not saying that
But
we
do the
should
pose
not
one more time.
have professional
Yeah,
headshots. So
yeah.
please do not think that's what I'm saying.
Or professional videos.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay. I think we should be excellent in the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And I do believe that times have changed. We should
Yeah.
advance. We not if you rolling out with a 45 or and other people are using digital media, you probably
Yeah.
a little behind. you know,
Okay.
you got the praying hands in your
Woo!
picture. It's just times have changed. So I
Yeah.
get this is a
Yeah.
progressive thing. But what has turned me off is just with some conferences, and this is me judging from myself, the experience. I don't want to do a show. I don't care if it's a conference, church, or whatever. I'm not moved by that. I'm really moved by the Spirit of God and some of the things that I have seen in women's conferences. It was a turnoff, and I didn't want to be associated with that.
Hmm.
And so I stopped for a while. And you have both. You have your
Yeah.
conferences that are of God and you have those that are money making
Yeah.
businesses. That's what they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Um, and some of them, they're just blessed. They do get
Hmm.
money, but the goal and the heart is
Hmm.
pure. But
Yes.
people give to them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think we have to use wisdom
Yeah.
about where we go and where we give our seed. And um, I don't know, it troubles me when we have more followers of men and women than followers of Jesus Christ.
Mm.
And I think that is one thing that I'm trying to process through.
Reconcile. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you guys kind of jumped ahead, but I'm okay with you
Oh,
doing so.
sorry,
No, no,
sweet.
no, no, no.
Oh,
Don't
I wanted to go
apologize because
back
it
to the mutuous
naturally,
piece, but go ahead.
yeah. I definitely want us to go back there, but we kind of start talking about marketing.
Right.
You know, but what is so in the spirit of the cross form, I love it. I'm sorry. That was funny because it's like everybody has that conference pose. But
Hmm.
in the spirit of marketing and excellence and promoting videos, headshots, because all of us have
Yeah,
been
headshots and
in
stuff.
have professional headshots, and I think that if you endeavor to do any type of some type of ministry, folk won't see what you look like. They vain. I don't make the rules,
You
but
won't
they
make the
do.
rules, but that's
I
it.
don't make the rules, but I just they say send the headshot.
Oh,
I want to send you the headshot that's professional, not the one of me in the car with the bad feet. That's
My
just
Lord.
me.
Oh
That's just
yeah, this
me.
is
So
true.
I do think that that should be done. Like that's
Yeah.
something professional
yeah.
and excellent in nature. Nothing wrong with having a professional headshots done.
Right.
Um, but what do you think? So we have professional headshots, and then we have these mini movies, I call them,
Sure.
that promote the event coming up because you
Mhm.
have videographers there for the current year to promote for the upcoming year.
Yeah.
And hear my heart when I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're wanting to
Mm-mm.
give people a headshot. We're getting ready to go to Africa. And it's funny because I was thinking, who's gonna take pictures? Because we're going to work. So we
Yeah.
may not have the capacity to snap a shot or whatever.
Yeah.
But I know that that was something that the mission host wanted to capture those moments to share with our friends and family back home that have sown to say, hey, these are some of the things that we've done. So again, not knocking these things because they're
Yeah.
needed. My question to you ladies is when is it too much? And is there such thing as it being too much?
You
And
know,
this is from a marketing standpoint.
we had that episode with Charnel, so I might need to just go back and look at that one to get more deep, because it was how much is too much church branding and business, and she was really good on that.
She
But
was really good.
um, when is too much?
But we didn't talk about
I
conferences. We were talking more so about branding from churches.
That's true. That's true.
But
Um,
does it not all come back to the same thing?
yeah, like
Which,
the root of
yeah. And I guess what is difficult to separate is maybe with conferences as with businesses, like this whole thing, this whole event where you're supposed to be ministering to women is to help draw them into the things of God and bring
Mhm.
clarity and support and love and unity, community, that kind of thing. So it all centers around
Yeah.
God. Well, it's
Mhm.
supposed to. But I think one of the areas that make conflict is when you focus so much on the individual. You know,
Yeah.
you know, there's this, it's almost like a celebrity culture within
Yes, that's what I'm about
the
to
church
say.
culture.
Yeah.
So I don't know, is a line being crossed? Can I read this to y'all?
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
read it.
Because oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is not totally about church conferences, but it's about church. I don't know
Mhm.
if anybody follows Raised to Stay. Um, However, she talks about a lot of this type stuff. And
Okay.
she said, if we're going to deconstruct the church, then let's start with green rooms.
Mm.
What
Oh,
is a green
oh
room?
my God.
Oh my God.
She says in show business, the green room is a space in a theater or similar venue that functions as a waiting room and lounge for performers before, during, and after a performance or show when they are not engaged on stage. Green rooms typically have seating for the performers, such as upholstered chairs and sofas. When is a green room appropriate for the church? When
Mm.
hosting a guest pastor or speaker, smaller meetings or special event conferences, hosting multiple speakers, a place for the pastor to pray or staff prayer for service. When is a green room not appropriate for church? Sunday mornings for band and singers to hide out all morning.
Mm,
Social gathering room for staff when congregates are in the building. Exclusive platform for exclusive for only those on the platform. By separating those on the platform from those they serve beside on staff and those they serve on Sunday morning, we are contributing to a celebrity culture that implies those on the platform are more special or more tired than those working the same hours in the same trenches in ministry. Yes, musicians arrive early for practice, but so do nursery workers to disinfect toys and prepare rooms, first impression teams to make coffee and set up foyers, and other pastors who arrive early to prepare for the people. It's ending. And they don't get a special room away from the people with snacks. If we
mm.
are going to tear anything down, let's start with the castles we've built on holy ground to house mere morals based on talent and remind everyone, even a microphone is a mop in the kingdom of God.
Good gracious. And a
Woo!
microphone is a
It's a
mop.
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 Oh
Send
Lord.
that to me
Yeah,
after
who
this.
is this person? You said raised to stay.
Grace
I
to
need to go
stay.
follow this person here.
Yeah.
But I think
That's a
she
lot.
makes
She
a
said much.
definite point for real because it is like a celebrity, like going back to the marketing piece and the videos. Like a lot of it, you'll see them getting putting makeup on or, being in front of the camera, taking shots, and then they'll go to the next part of the video. So it does kind of give that, even on social media, you will see a lot of preachers that have reached a certain status, doing little videos where they, showing you at their photo shoot or showing you like the luxury part of what they've reaped, I guess, from
The
Mhm.
what they
behind the
do.
scenes.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
talked
behind the
about that
scenes.
too
Yeah,
in
and
one of the
so
podcasts with your pastors. Like,
oh yeah,
do
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
want to see the personal side of the behind the
Exactly.
scenes,
Scenes. Hmm.
Yeah,
you
and so
know?
it that all contributes, like you said, to a celebrity. So I guess it's the motivation of that, and the heart behind it. Because I think a lot of times too, we pick up things that we see in the world and we create a video that look just like the famous rapper getting out the car or the famous or Beyonce, with the in the wind in the with the fan blowing her hair or
Band
something.
blowing.
We'll take from those
Emulate.
same,
Hmm.
yeah, things. So yeah, it goes back to motivation, but yeah.
So I'm gonna ask this question since we kind of went there a little bit as it pertains to marketing and um very good point with celebrities because when I look at some of these flyers like on that mantle conference, and this is nothing against the mantle conference, but the lineup
Girl was like
was
the who's who.
yeah, it was the
Mhm.
celebrities of Christendom.
Yeah.
It was recording artists,
Mhm.
Christian recording artists, very prominent and well known and established voices in our, in our community. And I wondered how would the flyer have presented if there were no pictures?
Mm.
And we
Mm.
just said mantle 24,
Come on, meet me
fire
there.
emoji,
Oh, beat me
meet
there.
me
Don't beat
there.
me there. And then, but that's good though,
You
Sue, because
say
a lot of times we don't see the no name preacher anymore. Where is it? When are the up and coming ones that are getting the opportunities like back in the day where we didn't know who Juanita was, but then TD had her on there and then pew, she went to the moon. You know what I'm saying? So like where are the up and coming ones anymore? You don't really see a lot of conferences that will have pastors that don't nobody know who they are and they face on the
hmm.
flyer. unless it's a local. I'm talking about. I'm more
Yeah.
so, I guess, talking about the major ones now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
But when you think about it,
So is I guess the question too. I'm sorry, Shanita.
no, you can.
Remember your thought. In that spirit of celebrity preachers marketing for these major platform pastors conferences, is the conference selling itself or are the people selling the conference? Meaning,
Mhm.
if you're gonna have the conference, which I think is beautiful, mantle I think is more so like more of a prophetic conference of
Yeah.
gathering of those that are of that gift set and things of that nature. So if you're gonna have this mantle conference and bring about all the prophets, the collective together, those with that gifting. What if you? I wonder if it was just, hey, mantle prophetic conference, these are the dates, this is the time, this is where you go to get your room. um Men and women of God, you will be blessed, as opposed to what we typically get, which is like a rundown of all the ministers and their profile pics and things of that nature. Do
Mhm.
you think that the conference itself sells it? And I'm not saying sell like sell, but like, does the conference market itself, or do the people on the roster for the conference market the conference?
The people on the roster is what I would say,
Okay,
because people see their favorite preacher and they like, oh yeah, I got to go. You
got
know.
you.
It's almost like when you have a concert, and you have the promoter, and you
Yeah.
have the people that the concert goer is going to see. They're going to
Yeah.
see the people that'll be on the show.
Hmm.
The promoter's
Mm-hmm.
just there to put it out,
Out there.
you
Yeah.
know, or the conference host. It can be different because sometimes, most of the time, the conference host in your larger scale churches, they're going to be speaking at some point,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
But then I think too, like, I guess, to play devil's advocate or whatever, is there anything wrong with that though? Like,
Right.
you know, because marketing 101 says, if you put such and such on the flyer, people gonna come. So what's
Yeah.
wrong with inviting the big names or putting the big names on there, because people are gonna come.
What's
Mm.
the
Yeah.
commercial? If you something, they will come.
If you build
If
it,
you build it.
It
I
was a
know that
fast
was
food.
Field of Dreams. I know you're
Yeah,
talking
Field of
about.
Dreams. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
So
Yeah. So
So, Holly, you said you before we transition, you said you wanted to speak back on leeches.
yeah, that whole piece, like when it comes to, because a lot of times you'll see that preachers, they kind of run in circles, I guess. And so it's like, if they have this person at this one conference, then it's like, if I have you at my conference, I want to be on your conference. So it's kind of like a recycling of people
Mm-hmm.
throughout the conferences, depending on what network is associated with that conference, if that makes sense.
It
yeah,
does.
And so I've, seen a lot of that. And what was interesting too, like with Mantle or whatever, um, there was one point, um, that people were talking about, the people who were invited. And naturally, I guess, when you're on stage and you are preaching, you're going to promote your product. You're going to promote, well, I got a conference coming up, y'all come over here, so a lot of that was going on or whatever. And one of the person put in the comments, which I thought was like, wow, they were like, they said it's almost like they competing with each other. Well, it wasn't necessarily between the preachers that were at that conference, but they were just saying conferences overall. They made the comment that, like, it's almost like they're competing to see who can be the greatest
Mm.
amongst the, who can have the greatest conference. And I was like, oh my. But that was, one of the things that, someone said, one of their arguments or whatever, which I think can become a thing in this conference culture, because you can be doing your conference and then you see this person got this person on the roster, and so then you have to up the ante to get people to come to yours. So I could see that happening. I'm not saying it necessarily happened at Mantle. I think this person was talking in general. with all the conference pop-ups that have been happening lately. It's like, well, you got this person, well, I got this, not that they're verbally saying it, but
Right.
through the marketing, through the, whatever, it
Yeah.
looks that way.
Mm-hmm.
That,
You
yeah.
know, I'm saying this just because of like how much I used to go to different conferences. And there's a spiritual immaturity for some people. I know it was for me, but you go to conferences always looking for a word and for
Mm,
God to speak to you. But
Mm.
yeah.
I found in growing that God um, has spoken the most to me when I'm alone, when I'm spending time in
Mm,
His Word,
Yeah.
come
and
on.
as I've grown in my relationship with Him. And it's not that I think God meets you where you are a lot of
Right. Right.
time.
Hmm.
However, you also have to be careful because you may become vulnerable
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
may take every word to be the word for
Word.
you.
Mhm. Oh
And
my
it's
God.
not
Ooh.
And you might
Mm.
not
necessarily
be
the
ready
word
for
that is
it.
for
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
so you hold on to it and you take it as Bible for your life
Mm,
instead of hearing from God directly. And
mhm,
so I hope that for those that are constantly, I'm going to hear this person, I got to hear a word. I hope we can get a word directly from God. Not saying people cannot. Typically, you will get a word from people who are already in your community.
That's right.
So
That's
that's
right.
one thing. But
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
God can, if He can use, like they always preach about, if He can use a donkey, you know, He can use anybody. So I'm not saying that you can't get,
Mm-hmm.
what you need from someone that you don't know. He can use whomever He wants to
Whomever.
use.
Yeah.
And so I just think we have to be careful that we're not finding ourselves in spaces of vulnerability that expose us to things we are not ready for and can't handle
That's good
because we
stuff.
misuse it.
Because you can definitely be
Mm-hmm.
exposed to things that you're not ready for at a conference. Because, like I said before, it can be fast track, fast paced. So if you
Hmm.
have a new believer going to a conference, certain words might not be for them. They may need to be
Mm-hmm.
processed before getting to a certain place to be able to
Right.
receive that word. So yeah, that's definitely valid,
I,
Shania.
that's such a I ditto that because I think it can be I definitely think it can be reckless. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that sometimes when you are new in your faith, and I'm not saying like you just got saved, but you could just be newly rededicated.
Hmm.
If you're going to go to conferences of that magnitude where you're on these on a grander scale with the roster of individuals that are coming and speaking, I think there's safety in numbers. You got to have someone with you that's of the more mature. So like when the prophet prophesy and tell you to start your church, that you don't come back and you just got saved last week. Not saying that that may
Um,
not be your future, but that somebody can help you walk through that,
Rightly divide the word of truth.
rightly
So many
divide.
words.
Now he didn't say start tomorrow, baby. Because I think
yeah.
those type things are important because a lot of times when you're going to a conference setting, I think the expectation is, and I'm just trying to think, I can't recall if there are like altar calls. I mean, I'm sure there are like for prayer, but I guess
Mm.
people, like I wonder if
Like you
like a
want to
lot of
get
the people
saved
who
type
go there
situation. You're
may
right.
already
Mm,
be
Mm.
of the faith. They're going to be
That
encouraged
like
and
that's the
edified.
expectation that they're
yeah.
already.
Right. So I'm
That's
not saying that they
interesting.
don't have altar calls there. That's
I don't
not what
know.
I'm saying.
I don't know of
You might
many
be on to
conferences that
something.
are focused on the unbeliever.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Maybe because I don't know if that's because
That's
we're supposed
true.
to impact them in our local bodies because there's more community there.
Could
They
be.
have discipleship
Mm-hmm.
and things of that nature they need to connect to someone locally, whereas your
Mm-hmm.
conferences on larger scales, I mean, of course, you can go and be saved. So I'm not saying
Right.
that you can't,
Yeah.
but you don't have necessarily that community
That
connection,
target.
local
Mm-hmm.
affiliation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I have
Right.
heard some people say, this is just a start. Go back to your
To your
home
home church.
city
Yes,
and
yes.
get, what you need there.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do know that the Perrys are in partnership with a couple of people and they're doing which I didn't know this, but I think there's a conference for every niche because I think I heard just thinking about when you were talking about conferences for unsaved, I remember Preston talking about on their podcast. He kind of said it casually that he had went to like almost like an apologetics conference
Hmm.
where the sole focus is going to be geared towards apologetics.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think the one that they're doing is geared towards discipleship.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay. Yeah,
so
she is doing one. Yeah.
I guess I could see in that in maybe in the discipleship one, you
Hmm.
may encounter maybe those that may not be of the faith. And I would imagine you're being taught and trained on
Yeah.
healthy discipleship, what that looks like to walk
Yeah.
alongside. But that
Yeah,
was
but
something that I thought about. No, go ahead, Holly.
oh, but yeah, well, speaking of them, well, and if you haven't noticed, the Perrys, we love y'all because we listen to y'all podcast, but y'all. But I remember her talking about, and she got crucified for that about when the prophets and people putting more weight on their words than the word of God.
Yeah,
That kind of goes back to that, to
yeah.
where like what you were talking about, Shanita,
Anita.
to
Mm-hmm.
where we're going to conference expecting this word when literally we can just open up our Bible and get a get a word from the
Yeah,
Lord.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think going back to that piece when we were talking about like the responsibility and when new believers may come, I think too, new believers going to certain conferences, if they're not careful, can um, draw them away from the faith instead of
Mhm.
draw them in. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
receive a word that says, well, do this and this will happen, and you do it and it
And
doesn't
it doesn't
happen,
happen.
if you don't have
Oh my God.
the faith, the endurance to sustain, you're gonna be like, well, ain't nothing to this gospel. I'm out of here, And so I think that's the danger too,
Yeah,
with that is instead of drawing people to, some people can end up,
being
Yeah.
drawn
led
away.
away.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. I think that's a very good point. Actually, my pastor literally made that point today about being drawn away from the faith when you've been commissioned. If you pay this money, and by the time you get home,
Girl,
it was still
lies.
the same, might I add. But I paid the money anyway. And so, like you said, if you're like new in your faith, then you start to question
Yeah.
what was different about me? Why didn't this thing
Yeah.
happen for
Mhm.
me? Do I not have
Mhm.
the relationship with the Lord? Even the situation that we recently discussed with Miss Massey, where the people were commenting, oh, she didn't have power.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen the way you are told, if this is going to happen,
Mhm.
sometimes like a recklessness with our words. Um,
Yeah.
can take place
Yeah.
and we just have to be super careful about that. So in that
Mhm.
same respect of being careful with our words and how we manage our voice and influence, which is very important, especially when you're speaking to 15,000 people, and that's 15,000 probably pastors and leaders and other prophets. But still, everything has to be tried, and we all prophesy in part.
Mhm.
How do you guys feel, or I don't want to say how you feel, but um, anyone who knows, who's ever been a part of a conference, especially on a wider scale or a broader scale, as well as even on a local scale, it costs resources if you
Yes.
want to do it remotely nice. And I'm not saying you got Channel 3 news money to make
Mm.
promotions, but I'm saying if you just do a video on your Facebook page and say, hey, come out, you want it to be nice. You want to have a little
Mhm.
intro music. You want to have the information down there so they can know where to go. All those things. And so it costs money. And ministry costs money. So we're not that's not what this is about. But I know that in some of the recent conferences, there has been, some backlash about like offerings and things that are taken up during the conferences. Um, so I went to a recent conference and I think it was $75. And it was only like a day and a half. Friday night, worship word. It was the glory conference actually. Friday night glory, worship in the word, and then Saturday worship, word, little break, word again, lunch, last time word. So she may have preached about 4 times. Um, had some books and paraphernalia and things out in the foyer. You saw 'em when you came in. So if you wanted to buy, you could buy or rent, or not rent, but go online or whatever. Um, Lifeway was a sponsor, so they were there handing out, hey, we have books and stuff you can buy, anyone who writes for them. And then that's pretty much it. And one of the things that stood out, because I hadn't been to a conference in many, many years before going to this glory conference. But one of the things that stood out to me, and I was like, am I at the conference loop? Is this what we're doing now? They didn't take up an offering.
Wow.
And it completely baffled me because I was ready. I came
Mhm.
prepared to give. I know ministry calls. And I was like, oh, they not okay. So I was like, oh, maybe they're gonna do it the second day. No, didn't do it that day either. And it was so baffling for me
Mm,
um that wasn't something that was incorporated into the event.
yeah.
And I just was like, oh, well, alrighty then. But what are you guys' thoughts about? Mm. I just,
I exhaled, and
you
I
did.
exhaled.
Yeah. Because and the reason why I'm asking this question is because we are talking about conferences and we're talking about culture and we're talking about all of those things and good, bad, and indifferent. And in doing research and seeing these things happen, this is something that I do know for a fact that does come up, and this is the money factor.
Yeah,
And conferences aren't cheap, so you're already paying
they are
if it's
not.
a couple of hundred to
Exactly.
register, and then there's a VIP registration if you want
Hmm.
to get closer.
Yeah,
Extras.
And then there is the if it's not in your city, you gotta commute there, fly there, whatever you gotta do. You gotta have transportation when you get there. You gotta have a place to stay. So you gotta Airbnb it. You gotta have food because you're probably not cooking because they wear you out. You're tired.
Yeah.
You're in church all day.
Now
yeah.
all
Yeah, you're eating out every day. You're leaving late. You're coming up early. These morning glories start at 8 o'clock. You
day.
know, so and then there's offerings that are being required
Yeah.
or not required, but asked of you. What
Mhm.
are your thoughts about that? Okay.
You know what?
She
You
looked.
know what I will say? Uh Now, I've seen some stuff that I'm just like, oh, they help us. But some stuff, like when I say there are some who have mastered the art of how to get money from people, like you get you to a certain emotional state. And once you
Mhm.
get people to a certain place, honey, they'll give their children's college fund. I mean, they will.
Not the
Like,
kids' college
seriously,
fund.
and some people know exactly what buttons to push to get people to that place. So I've seen those manipulative type things. You know, money in order to get a prophecy. Just girl,
Oh my goodness.
um, honey, and
Can I get $10, $20, 30,
honey, it
40,
wasn't
50?
$10. It was $600.
Yeah,
Oh,
going on up.
I
Yeah.
said, no, ma'am, God, you can keep that
to
word.
hear from Jesus.
Um, But I've seen that. But then I have been in moments to where I'll hear God say, "Hey,
Mhm.
give this," and then the preacher will say, "I feel God saying." Then I'll be like, "Okay, well, Lord." So there are, so there's kind of that.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question.
Yeah.
In reference to conference hosts, we talked about those. So these are the individuals who are responsible for hosting this event. Do you think that it is their responsibility when it comes to the offering and the gathering of the offering and requesting? Because I want it to be clear that every one of us, we are tithers, we give, we don't have an issue with giving. That's my issue. And what I'm talking about has nothing to do with giving.
Mhm.
We're talking about in a conference setting when you've already
Hey,
paid hundreds of dollars to partake and um and still being requested to pay more to cover cost.
Mhm.
And sometimes that is verbalized that there's like some remaining things that need to be
yeah.
covered.
We
And
need
so I'm saying,
$500.
you know what? Is
What
it the
she say?
response? What'd you say,
I
Holly?
said we need $500
You know what? That's low. That's the local
I
conferences. Then,
know, no.
the other one be like, we need 50,000 more. Huh?
Oh my God.
But I guess my question is, do you feel like it's a responsibility of the conference host to, if that's something that's going to be requested, that how that's done, and even if it's not done, is there, if it's happening to be requested, does that mean that we have overshot?
Mm,
So I know I kind of was talking. So my question is it the responsibility of the conference host to mitigate what that offering process looks like when you're asking people to give? Because I think it's nothing wrong with asking people, if this is blessing you, if you've been blessed, please sow a seed.
Yeah.
I that's totally fine. But when there comes to pay $2,500 lines and the different
oof.
things, and we're trying to cover costs,
The
what do you
auction.
think that should, how you think that should look? Is that the responsibility of that conference host to mitigate what that offering process looks like on a nightly basis? And if you're having to ask for money to cover costs, did you overstep your budget?
I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
fully. I will say that I'm sure being the conference host is a great undertaking,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you involve speakers, pastors,
Yeah.
gospel, or whatever. They're not just all gospel, but different
Yeah.
artists,
Artists.
and everybody has a price.
Honorarium. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, at their honorarium. You got to pay hotel. You might have to
Yeah.
cover their assistance fees, travel fees. You may have to give them something on top of this. It's just based on their contract. There's another thing. You have contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have your venue. And if you're
Mhm.
having it in a coliseum or a
Him.
dome
Yeah.
or
Gotta pay those people.
Yeah.
right, they have to pay their staff that they have hired. And then you have contractors. It might be for lighting, your audio, your
Mm-hmm.
visual. Maybe it's a videographer, a photographer, or, of course, people want to be paid for singing or dancing
Mhm.
or playing the music. That is a major
Yes.
budget. I would hate to see what one looks
Mm.
like that's in the millions, which
Oh
I'm
my
sure
God.
something like
It's some
Woman
of the art.
Evolve, Woman Thou Art Lose.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those are probably
Easily
that
there.
scale.
Yeah.
And I know that responsibility does fall on the host, but it's also one of the things. This is why I say I don't really know. It's one of those things that you can't necessarily predict. You have to
Mm-hmm.
believe that you're going to receive what you need to cover
Need.
your expenses. And
Yeah.
I think that is oftentimes why people promote the way that they do. We only have 50 more
Yeah.
seats
That's
left.
true.
We have 100 more seats left because you have a budget to meet. And when
Mhm.
people don't show up in those seats,
That's the budget.
Mm.
you
Yeah.
may be, yeah, under your budget and you're at a deficit. So now, and I'm not saying this is the way everybody thinks,
Mhm.
but that is a business way of looking at things. And
Mhm.
so you have to think, even though we like to say church is not a business and this is not a business,
Yeah, I mean,
you dealing with
It
money
is.
this is
Yeah.
true.
and it ain't $50.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
These are major expenses.
Yeah.
Not only that, you have to think about how, you block off hotel rooms. If you
Wow.
don't get people to meet those hotel rooms, they may say, how many rooms do you need at 10 different hotels? We need to
Mhm.
block out 200 rooms. Well, your contract may say if you don't book a certain percentage of these rooms, you owe us this money.
Wow.
So you have so many different, then you got to pay people to drive, your
Mm.
drivers, and they not coming in a
But
little too, you know
Mm-mm.
what I'm
No, no.
saying?
Mm-mm.
They coming in the nicest area, and then
Yeah.
you got to treat them to dinner because that's what you
Mhm.
do with the people that you're bringing. There's so many different expenses that go along with, and I don't know if hair and nails and all that could be an accommodation. It could be a request depending on who the person is, or they may bring their own. So then you got to pay for that
pay
too.
for them too.
You know
Yeah.
Mm.
what I'm saying?
Oh.
So I hate to say it. I don't hate to say it is. I won't say it is a business, but it's handled like business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It
bit
is.
their it's
It's
their
true.
business affairs. So whether if should the host be responsible for everything, I think they are, and maybe that's how they meet
Yeah. The
the
Mhm.
budget.
expense. Yeah, meet the
Yeah.
budget.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. I think so too. Excuse me. Um, I guess there is a way that because for if a conference host, they're going to have different speakers, right? So I don't know if they can be completely responsible. I guess they could say before, okay, guys, this is my stance on offering. But then if the person gets up there led
Go
by the Holy
rogue.
Spirit,
Yeah.
the Lord is telling me that
What's up?
somebody got
All them quotes.
well, if it's questionable, and then then kind of what do you? But
What do
then of
you
course,
do?
unfortunately, the reputation of the host suffers as a result because that
Yeah.
happened, during the conference that we just previously named. Because there was, a big name up there, and they were asking for this astronomical offering, but people were blaming the conference host, like why he have her, what so it's like it's that catch 22, to
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
guess they do bear some of the responsibility, but at the same time,
Hmm.
if somebody go rogue, what do you do in that moment? Do you go on stage and take the mic from them, or do you just pray and be like, Lord, just help it? I mean, you
And
know,
there are those pastors that will go up there
they
Yeah.
will.
and
This is
shut it
true.
down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes a big person, a great person to do that, a person of integrity to come
Yeah,
up. And I mean, you risk it all,
I
your
know.
friendships,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
embarrassment. Now everything goes
Mhm.
viral, like we talked about on one of the shows.
Yes. Good
Yes.
grief.
There's just so
Yes.
much to
Turn off these
consider.
phones.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Can you just be in the
So,
moment for once? But go ahead.
yes, please
Turn
be
off
in the
all
moment. Good
that.
grief. So, like from that point, when we're talking about cost, and Shanita, you did a really good job of kind of breaking down all of the many components of
Yes.
what it takes to do a mantle or a woman evolve. Like, in the grand scheme of things, all the moving pieces and logistically how everything has to go.
Mhm.
I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm answering my question already. So I know some of these conferences have, and I don't think we've talked about this, but this is my segue. I know a lot of these conferences, like, and I'm just talking about Mantle because it's the main one that had like a slew of people
Mhm.
on the roster
Yeah.
or whatever. Do you think that sometimes when we're attending conferences of this nature, and I'm speaking of like on those bigger, grander scales, and grander just because they're more worldwide.
Yeah.
Not that our local conferences aren't grand in
Yeah.
presentation, not by any means am I saying that. But do you think that there are times where there is an oversaturation of personalities or even information?
Mm,
Yes.
And and because it's only so much that you can contain. I feel like I grew up watching Al Bundy, and there was an episode where Kelly was on a game show, and it was like a fact-based show where she had to learn facts, and so she was memorizing all this stuff. But bless her heart, Kelly wasn't the smartest cookie in the bunch. So every time she would memorize something, she would lose another memory.
Oh wow.
oh,
And
jeez.
like she would gain a memory and lose a memory. Bless her heart. My point in saying telling that little story was that if there is so much information that you are being inundated with because it's it's a full day and a full night
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's preaching and there's so much information, how effective do you think that it is?
Depends. Well, some people take notes.
Yeah.
You mean the content that they're receiving, the information that they're receiving?
I'm saying it seems like sometimes it's information overload. Now, here, let me just put my disclaimer out there. I hadn't been to, I don't remember a lot of heavy day sessions and things of that nature. And you can correct me, Shanita, when we went to just last Woman the Heart Loose. I know there was a night session.
Yeah,
I know they did stuff in the morning, like somebody preached that morning. I remember there being like a little round table, just Miss Jakes and
yeah,
Sarita and all the girls and the kids talking. And then I think somebody preached at night.
yeah,
Um, but some of these conferences are like packed, like your
Mm-hmm.
classes and breakouts
Yeah.
and
right.
um things of that nature. And it's like so much information. Do
Mm-hmm.
we think that even in that presentation, that there could be like information overload?
I
I
know
kind
that's
of see it
right.
along the same lines of like if I go to a work conference or and
Should
we
there
have
be information
something,
overload too? But go
it
ahead.
does.
Mm.
Or if I'm going to, I mean, pick a conference and they have it all day. Now, the church conferences might be a little bit longer, but I think it is possible to lose the value of the content
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
if you're not strategic in taking notes.
Notes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, like you can miss a moment
Yeah.
so quick if you're not taking notes, but then you're trying to keep up with
They-
what they're
So you
saying.
missed the moment.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so you miss the moment.
Exactly.
And there could be content but overload, so maybe it's just we pray that what we're supposed to receive in those moments
Mm-hmm.
we get it, because truth be told, if I'm not taking notes or writing something down or putting it in my phone, I'm not going to remember everything everybody
Mm-hmm.
said.
Right, right.
That's why you have those moments where people say, well, how was church? Oh, it was so good, because they remember the impact of what
Impact,
was
the
said in the moment.
experience, how
But then
they
you
felt.
say, well, what did they talk about? I don't remember
Yeah.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're like me, you might have just told me something 2 days ago, and I'll be like, well, what'd she say? But
But
if
you
I'm
didn't
writing
tell
it
nobody.
down,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
like things, it has to be something strategic if you desire to carry that information with you forever. Or even like I'm the type of person, if somebody got a word for me or it's prophetic or something, I'm like, well, can I record it? Not
Mm-hmm.
because I'm trying to make sure you said something right and I'm gonna come back to it later, but I want to be able to listen through it because I know
Right.
I'm not gonna remember that information,
I do that
no
as
matter how
well.
great it
Right.
was.
And
Mhm.
I definitely agree with that. The need to take notes in those settings. but there are people who take notes that never go back over them.
That's true.
They just taking notes because everybody else taking
Yeah, they'll never
you
study.
know, and don't never go back and look at it.
That's
So,
true
but
too.
I do feel like it could definitely get to a place of information overload. Because what's that phrase called? Being word fat. We got so much word, but what have
Mm,
we done with what we got at that last conference?
Yeah,
So it's like just being more strategic as far as not just packing the program down with a bunch of people, but
mhm.
let's give some impactful words, and and it not be make more on quality versus quantity.
Quantity.
you
Yeah.
know
And
yeah.
I think about like stuff, especially, and I think someone mentioned this. I don't know if it was you, Shanita, or Holly earlier in this conversation, and I just want to go back and revisit it because um I think that there's a place for both. I think that there's a place for your woman evolves and your mantles and your camp meetings.
Hmm.
I think there's a place for them, and we know that over the years God has used them all. But
Yeah.
I think some of the greatest ministry that we'll ever receive will take place in our local communities, in our, excuse me, churches.
God
Excuse me, I'm
bless you.
sorry. I apologize. I think some of the greatest ministry that we'll ever receive is going to take place right in our local assemblies, the
Exactly.
conferences that we have in our churches, the people that our pastors bring in, the
Hmm.
people in our region that know
Yeah.
the area, those unheard voices that are just as powerful, but no one
Exactly.
knows about them. So I think that's something that we should always, not always, but just consider as well.
Yeah,
And
because
I get,
oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna interdict right there because most of the time people will go to conferences and they'll be all excited about what somebody's saying, and their pastor saying the same thing, but they don't give the same because they've gotten so
Yeah.
familiar with
Familiar.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yep.
go ahead, sweet. I was just gonna
So I guess my last question would be this: from a content standpoint, do you guys feel that we are being made better disciples from attending these conferences, or is it given more of a self-help orientation?
mm,
Dun
now.
dun
I think it
dun.
varies because you
Yeah.
go to something like I hate doing names, but Jackie Hill Perry. You may go to one of their what's the tour they were doing or the
The
I don't know
podcast
if you
tour?
would say tour but conference. Aren't they
Glory.
doing one on
Glory?
discipleship?
Oh
Oh,
Maybe
the
no,
discipleship one.
yeah, the discipleship thing.
yeah, it's one of y'all mentioned it.
Oh
So I
yeah,
think you have more some that are focused in
Hmm.
yeah.
that way. Um, and I'll just say some others are not. They are feel good messages, self help. But do we need feel good messages? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I've had um, you know, a rough time on the job and you just want to give up, or maybe you're struggling with your children or whatever. Maybe you're struggling your finances and you need a good message to uplift you
Hmm.
and to build you up and that to motivate you. Do
Hmm.
we need that only? Absolutely not. Because
Absolutely.
something has to check us and bring us to this call of righteousness and
Hmm.
holiness
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talk about discipleship and salvation. And
Hmm.
those are self help also
Hmm.
pieces.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying in self help in the way that, um, in 10 days, God is,
Individualistic. Yeah.
yeah, God's gonna bring you out because you called to bring, whatever. But I don't mean to sound so callous, but it's a thing. I think
Woo.
they sometimes have their place because I've heard people
Right.
say we don't need no motivational messages in the church. You might not need. I need
Ah.
motivation
Yeah, I
sometimes.
do too
Yeah,
sometimes.
You
Yeah.
sometimes,
speak for
yeah.
yourself. And sometimes I
Hmm.
do need that, but I also need someone to remind me of who Christ is in
Hmm.
my life and who he was on this earth and what he was sent here to do. and how I need to demonstrate that same love,
Right.
same compassion,
Mhm.
and same scope of life when I'm working with other people,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
because we don't
Yeah.
always get it.
We
Mhm.
don't.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And
good.
I totally agree with that. That it's about balance, you know. Well, but then it's like people. I guess you have to put in, you know, something that I guess people are going to be attracted to. Unfortunately, people are not necessarily attracted to becoming
The
more like
word
Christ.
at
Right.
You
all.
know,
Not
they like
necessarily.
honey,
Not really.
they want to use him to get they car, they house,
Yeah.
they, you
Husband,
know,
they wife, yeah.
tell me about my ministry. How do I, you know, monetize? How do I, I mean,
It's true.
It's
Not how do I
true.
turn the other cheek or how do
Right.
I
How do I
love
nobody want to hear
disciple?
that.
somebody
They
that's
want to,
doing me wrong.
Yeah.
they
How do
want
I
to know
walk
how, come on.
alongside?
How can I
That's
become
true.
a millionaire, you know, using the gospel? How can I mean, come on,
Said you was in the
He
well,
said using the gospel. Yo,
come
y'all cutting
on,
up today.
well, this is what I've seen, you know, but
speak what you know, daughter.
you know, but yeah, but definitely. So I think that's why, you know, that balance is necessary, you know, so that it's not just. But then there are those. Oh my goodness, y'all!
Oh,
Excuse me, something flying. It
go
just
smack
almost went up
yourself.
my
You
nose.
just smack him. Good grief.
Anyway,
He's
there
busy. The
are
devil
those
is busy.
conferences that are, you know, see y'all laughing at me now. I can't even finish my point. But it almost went up my nose too, doggone it. You know one of them little fruit fly thingies?
Yes, you must
Oh,
have fruit in your house.
I think I do. I need to put some peppermint oil on my thing real quick. But anyway, but there are those conferences that are geared towards business and,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and growing your ministry. So I
Yeah.
get it, you know, on
Yeah,
in that aspect.
absolutely.
But yeah, balance is necessary.
Balance is key. So, with that being said, I'm just thinking, and it does seem like, and I could be wrong, kind of recircling back to the beginning. I do feel like there has been an uptick. I
Mm,
don't know what caused the uptick. And I think I remember like back in the day, like we've already said, there were those prominent conferences that we were aware
mhm,
of.
mhm.
Um, the Woman Thou Art Lose, the camp meetings, the what was that one? I think it was Dominion. I can't remember who that
Oh yeah.
was. That was
Hmm.
Jesse Duplantis or
Yeah.
whoever. There were certain
Jesse.
staple conferences that everyone knew. I feel like I don't remember Pastor Dollar having one.
He had him.
He had he
Yeah.
had them too.
Was it
Yeah,
World Changes something or
World
something?
changes.
world changes. So like I'm saying that there was like those prominent ones that we knew
Yeah.
about.
Mhm.
And I think Joyce Myers may have one too. Benny
I
Hinn,
forgot
well, his
about.
was more traveling.
Oh yeah, I did go to one of Joyce's. I forgot about her
Yeah.
conference. Okay.
I think I did. I went to a Benny Hinn conference when he came, or healing or
I
whatever you
never
want.
got to go to Benny Hinn,
Yeah, I
but I
seen him
heard
in
about it. But
Charlotte. Yeah, but
that he waved his hand and everybody
he
fell
waved his
out.
hand and we fell out. Yes, yes, I was there. I was there at
You
the
was there. I
in
was there.
in the top rafters at the Charlotte Coliseum.
Ooh, Lord.
So I think like when I think about those things and like how there's just been shifting with them. And then it did seem like out of the clear blue sky, it was like everybody is hosting a conference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you think that this is something that is trendy? Not conferences, because conferences have been around forever and a day. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying this everybody hosting conferences because now people are out. It is not a day that does not go by. And I kid you not, and I'm not even
True.
exaggerating that on my Facebook page that I don't see a flyer for
Oh.
somebody hosting some type of conference. And a lot of times this is like our local region area, whatever, whatever. And I just be like, dang, these
Mm.
people are having conferences.
Honey, just meet me.
It's just me. But not.
Holla.
Ooh.
Oh,
But
she
I
on one
believe like
today.
it has become a business for
So
some,
that's what I guess that was my question. Like, do you guys feel like this uptick and upsurge in the conferences is more so trending, and it's a tactic to bring in resources,
some people
or
been called by God to do it, because I've been to the conferences and I'm like, yeah, this is Jesus led.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
then there are others who see that, okay, this person has been successful doing this.
Mm.
This is a way to to make income in the kingdom, and call it God, and call it trying to really help build people up, but you're really just trying to build your own kingdom.
I have a question. Are there any
Mhm.
conferences that exist where you don't have to pay anymore?
Were there ever any?
Yeah.
I ain't seen none yet
Who?
of late.
Back in the day, yeah, that was a normal thing.
And back in the day, it
Oh,
was
when they
normal
just
for
took
you
up
not to pay
offering.
for night sessions. You didn't have to pay for the night sessions, but you would have to pay like if you did
So,
anything during the
no, you
day.
didn't have to pay at all. Back in the day, they were called women's fellowships. We didn't call
Oh.
them conferences. We called them women's
Are you
fellowships.
talking about locally, like in your local
Yeah,
assembly?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
because
like
Yeah,
yeah,
so
back home, like yeah, they would always have stuff at the house. I mean, not at
mhm.
the house, but
like
in
in the back
my in my
fellowship hall.
fellowship
Yeah,
hall, they
yeah.
do
But now,
something,
Those,
they
yeah,
bring in a
those didn't
speaker. Yeah, you
cost.
didn't pay for that.
but
If
now
you did, it'd be
you can
like
just
$10 or something. They want you
Yeah,
to,
just for them to buy the
buy
food.
the food that you're
yeah,
gonna eat.
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty much.
Now even the smaller ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
even the
just
yeah.
don't
smaller ones like,
You gonna get
are
it
pricey.
might be about 50.
Some
50.
girl.
You have to give
$85,
you gotta give how much?
some are 85.
Jesus. You gotta
Mhm.
contribute to the cause.
I
So
just don't see many places for women to gather, and it doesn't cost. And I'm not saying like if y'all gonna eat, you might need to contribute, things like that. So I get it because everybody ain't got all the money to always contribute.
Mhm.
But I was just thinking about that. Is there anything anywhere for women together where it doesn't necessarily always cost and it's
I
not pricey?
I think
Yeah,
not of a conference nature. I think that the
probably
women
not.
gathering is really probably happening in your local assembly with the women at your church. We used to have I forgot what it was called at my church, where one Saturday out the month, the women would gather and we would have little pick me ups, little
Yeah,
finger foods and stuff.
Mhm.
And we gather for like an hour and a half and somebody would share something, but it
yeah.
was just a good time of fellowship mainly.
We have it as well.
And that's not anything that obviously that anyone paid for. That was just come
Yeah,
on out. We're gonna be out here. We're gonna pray,
fellowship,
talk,
Yeah.
fellowship, wash feet, whatever the
do
case
a
may
good word,
be. Good,
wash feet.
yeah, wash feet, that kind of thing. I think anything now, I don't is even what you said from a conference standpoint, I don't know of anything that's free because now everybody's a life coach. I don't know who's certifying everybody, but everybody's a life coach. And I'm just saying, but they are. And so now that's another expense
The
because
Yeah.
business.
it's a business piece of it
Mhm.
because now you're paying for the classes
Yeah.
that you take, like those whatever
Mhm.
those classes
Yeah,
are.
That's true. Everybody
So
got a webinar, and
a
they got
webinar, so
and a
nobody is,
program that you go
yeah,
through.
it's rare to see information being freely
That's
given.
free.
And
Yeah.
I would say,
It
I want to say this to you guys to ask this question because I just thought about this, Shanita, just now when you asked the question. Have you guys noticed that when you see these conferences and things of that nature, like I see a lot more women um hosting, or I guess women hosting conferences than I see men having
that was going
conferences.
to be something. Yeah,
Mhm.
we have a men's conference. It's not as hasn't always been as consistent as the women, but even if you look at the ratio in the church,
Yeah,
That's
women
true.
are more
dominant.
present
More present.
Hmm.
than men.
Yeah,
And so, and we're involved in more things.
yeah.
And I think it goes to show too, because the conferences that I'm thinking about that are from a like national standpoint, Woman Art Loose is hosted by a man, was hosted by a man.
Hmm.
Campfire was hosted by Rob Parsley. Even Mantle was hosted by a
Hmm.
man. Like a lot of the more prominent conferences of the days of old were primarily hosted by men, with the exception of Joyce Meyer.
Taffy Dollar does one
Right
too.
about that. It has done a flipperoo, hasn't it?
And
But
what's the name
but
that
when
does
you
the one that does Jesus go? Medina Pullings.
Oh
Medina
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Pullins,
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
she just had something recently I
Yeah,
saw.
she did.
Jesus Girl.
Jesus Girl
Uh-huh.
Summit, I think. Yeah.
That's her
Yeah.
conference.
And I'm saying outside of them, when I see things locally, and when I say locally, I'm talking about state, county, and more so state and like surrounding areas or whatever, it's always something that's being hosted by a woman.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't see a lot of men gathering, and they need to, honey.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I'm gonna suggest y'all need to talk.
Come on.
I
I'm
don't know
scared.
what I do wish that I see some churches doing thing like felt like my church does men's fellowship just like they
Yeah, I
do
think my church
women's
is doing
fellowship
something like
too.
that too.
But I think men need a greater investment.
They need to be discipled.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
girl.
there's a lot.
Bless their little
I
hearts.
don't know that all
We
churches
love
have.
y'all, man.
Jesus,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Shanita.
what was I
Well,
saying?
You don't know
I
that a
don't.
lot
you
of
can
I don't
churches.
have.
even know that all churches have the necessary resources or education to provide it because there's so few men.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
true.
like even I was going to a local workout where it was held at a church, and there were mostly women. Like there were a few men
Hmm.
at
Mhm.
the church, but there it was mostly women, even with the working out.
I will say this though, like when I've seen men do stuff, it seemed like they stuff be more fun than ours. No, but when I went the church I used to go to, like we was always the women was always in church or being told what we
Them jokers
won't
be
do,
out there doing
or
paintball
what
and
we can do better, or
How you
how
can
we
be a
can
better
be
wife,
quiet, how you can be.
submit, raise your children, clean your house,
Meanwhile, the men on on the beach, the
raise your
men
dog,
playing golf, the
everything,
yeah,
men,
going bowling,
do nothing
go,
having a
fun.
doing
cookout.
paintball. The men at my church used to do paintball, and they was like, "Hey, we're meeting up for paintball on such and such," and I would be like, I would love to do something like that's right up my alley." They'd be like,
I'm like, I
"Yeah."
want to go with the men. Sign me up on the Christian
Right.
side.
You said you want to do something fun. I want to do the fun stuff.
Exactly.
That
Yeah,
was funny.
they went camping. The men at our church one
Oh.
time, they went
Oh
camping.
wow.
Like,
But
you're
that's
right,
more of a
Holly.
retreat, I guess, versus a conference. But still, it's a gathering, But
No, your point is
yeah,
true. Like when they gather and do things.
Or they
exactly.
have, around football season, they going to
Yeah.
they
Yeah, or
host
they'll do
big
Super Bowl
events.
together, or
Yeah.
man,
They do more fellowship than
Chips. Yeah.
yes,
conferences.
yes.
Well,
And
some
that's
of
and
them.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that lines up with them too. Like women, the essence of us is fellowship. We stay fellowshipping. You just said you want to fellowship and do something fun. You want
Exactly.
to. Y'all are hilarious.
Oh
This has been
God.
quite comical.
Oh, for real.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's good though.
So as we are wrapping home base with our conference topic, any lasting comments or thoughts or just anything you'd like to share about conference culture?
Hmm.
Just use wisdom
Mhm.
and study the word Study to show thyself approved,
That's good.
and don't always look for your word to come at a conference, because you may get disappointed because you may not get a
That's
word.
it, right?
And
Yeah.
it is best for you to have a full relationship with the Lord so that you can hear clearly from Him. And going to a conference should be the icing on the cake for
Mm,
you.
Right.
And if
That's
you
good.
get something that is revelatory to you, or it is confirming or affirming something that you needed to hear, then praise God. But
Mhm.
don't let that be your end all, be all, because you eliminate the voice of God by expecting to only hear it through another woman or man.
mhm.
Really good. Yeah, I definitely ditto that. And I would say be discerning, on your choice of conference, and as well as being discerning when you are within the conference, when you're in those heightened moments, and,
Yeah.
understanding again, like we talked about earlier, that every word may not be for you, or, you know, don't leave broke, don't get so emotionally. I mean, my Lord,
Message.
look, this is wisdom right here, though.
Yeah,
That is wisdom. It's good. You
that's
talking good.
true.
Because we
Don't
can
give all
be
your money.
so emotionally heightened that, we end up just giving away the kitchen sink. And so we just got to use wisdom. We have to be discerning, and then there are moments where people can get in their flesh, even when they're up teaching you. So you have to learn how to eat the meat and spit out the bones, in other
Literally
words.
took the word.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
when you're in those conferences and everything. So yeah, that's my final thought.
Well, they've said everything that I wanted to say, literally. So I would just say ditto to everything that's been stated and would reiterate with much intensity to use wisdom and discernment. And I think if you use wisdom and discernment, that you will not I think, I know you will not be led astray. So that is all we have to share today on
Yeah.
conference hosts. We love conferences. We
Yes,
may
I
have a
do.
podcast conference. I don't know.
Hey, come
We're
on.
we're not knocking
Would y'all
conferences.
come?
We, you know,
Don't meet us, they'll meet us there.
you know what? I cannot. Trying to be serious and
Okay,
end
I'm
the
sorry.
show, and Holly is still cutting up.
Oh
But yeah, like
no.
we love conferences.
Yes.
We've participated. We will continue to participate.
Yes.
Um, we just noticed that there was some things taking place. So thank you guys for listening to us rant
Yeah.
and laugh and act silly and act funny.
Mhm.
And we want you to put comments under our YouTube page after you like, share, and subscribe, and send it to a
Yes.
conference host. We ain't trying to ruffle nobody's feathers, but we would love to hear feedback
Yeah,
about people
exactly.
who, from individuals who have hosted major conference scales, and having an understanding of what that entails and all of what it does, all of what it takes to produce something of that magnitude. Again, like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Facebook at Truth Reveal Podcast. You can check us out on YouTube. We are also on Instagram. And then again, leave us some comments. Share your comments with us. We love to dialogue and hear what you guys have to say. And if there's anything that you actually want us to speak about, hey,
Yeah.
leave that too, and we'll entertain the possibility.
Hmm.
All right. Well, you guys have an awesome, awesome week,
Yeah.
and we will see you next time.
Bye,
Peace.
y'all. Peace.